Hello, everyone, and welcome to Theory into Practice. Today, we're going to venture outside of the norm just a little bit, and we're going to talk about someone who has. We'll talk with somebody, not about somebody, because she's talking with me. We're going to talk about with somebody on how they've gone from the public sector to the private sector, now owning their own business. I'm very excited about this interview. We've actually gone back and forth a couple times. I was able to interview her at IEM last year, briefly on the floor of the forum, and put that out and got to meet her and actually talk with her, get to know her a little bit, which is what led me to invite her onto the show. But without further ado, I'd like to welcome Stephanie Hunt to the show.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Happy to be
Thank you.
here.
Yeah, thank you, Stephanie, for taking the time. Will you tell everybody, just give everybody a quick background on about who you are and what you do, and your background coming up from FEMA to where you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have been in the emergency management business for about 25 years. I started as a wee pup. I was a lifeguard at the end of high school into college, and then I got my EMT license on the National Registry. I was so excited. So I started in public safety. My goal was to be either a firefighter or police officer, of which I made it into a few departments. I have my firefighter one from very young when I was young and much more capable at that point. And I was actually I lived in California at the time, so I was hired by LA City Fire, but I was also hired with the Santa Ana Police Department, of which I chose to join. So I spent some time there in the academy due to an injury, unfortunately, a pretty severe injury during training. I was unable to continue as a police officer, but I stayed at the department for a few years. But within that time there, I had gotten my master's degree, not because I was smart in the sense of I had this plan of getting my master's, but I had a bunch of friends at the department who were doing this thing called a cohort in an emergency management program that at the time was called the Emergency Services Administration. And I said, that seems fun. I'll try that. So I ended up joining. It was Cal State University, Long Beach, which we all know and love, has an amazing program, but it was one of their first cohorts. I was there way back in the day. And so my degree, my master's, is in Emergency Services Administration. So I was fortunate enough to have that so that when I did get injured, I had to pivot pretty significantly from being a frontline first responder into something different. And that's where emergency management really came into my life. I knew about it, but I decided to pursue it full time. And I ended up getting a job out in Arlington County, Virginia, as the NIMS compliance coordinator out with the Office of Emergency Management, and spent several years there. I was a regional planner as well, a deputy coordinator responding to local incidents and disasters throughout the National Capital Region with DC and Virginia and Maryland and all my friends up there. And so I spent a lot of time there at the local level. From there, I ended up joining the US Department of State. That was pretty exciting. I decided I want to go the federal route, see what that was all about. So I ended up training ambassadors and deputy chiefs of missions and all of their department heads at embassies and consulates and consulate generals all over the world. And I got to travel extensively and meet amazing people and local staff in lots of different countries, from the Middle East, I was in Iraq, to Fiji, where I got to swim with dolphins. So everything in between, just beautiful, wonderful people in every country I've been to, from the Middle East to Europe to South America. I've been to all the continents except Antarctica. So I got to go walk with penguins there at some point. After the State Department, I did join FEMA, and I was on the National Incident Management Assistance Team as the planning section chief, with a lot of amazing people. Administrator Chris was actually my boss at the time. She was our team lead. So amazing leadership there, as well as a lot of my partners at the chief level and then the team members with me. But I was in my mid 30s. I was tired of traveling at that point. So I decided to tried to find a job local to home. And I ended up getting hired as the first emergency manager at the Metropolitan Washington Airports Authority. So I was able to help in coordination with my colleagues at Dulles International Airport, as well as Ronald Reagan National Airport in the corporate office. And we have an access toll road as well, to help coordinate with them an emergency management program that was enterprise-wide, that helped support the corporate structure, as well as supported response efforts and operations at the airports. And so I got a lot of great education there. Made a lot of really great friends, found a really neat niche there, spent about 4 years at the Airports Authority and built that legacy up. There's two more emergency managers. The third one is there currently. And when they had their incredibly tragic accident over the Potomac these last few months ago, the emergency manager there, I know, had strengthened the program significantly and obviously built upon any sort of legacy I had left, and then my predecessor or the person who came after me had created. And so that was really neat to see that they had a foundation for emergency management there. And then after that, I joined a consulting firm, as many of us do, go from the government to the private. So I spent about 6 months there as a vice president doing lots of different things, but mostly on the preparedness side as well as corporate strategy. And then I thought it was time. I had my own business in between there several years ago, and I thought it was the right time again to start my own company, Hunt Strategic Solutions, where I really focus on preparedness and response. And I try to bridge the gap between elected officials and corporate leadership, as well as executive managers, senior leaders, things like that, and how they interface with EOCs, with their frontline personnel, what they should be doing, can be doing to help support them. I have found that's been a big gap, is for those leaders to have a really good understanding about what they can be doing and should be doing during disasters, during emergencies, with crisis communications and corporate support, and what their role really is. So that's what I've been doing over these last, 25 years, I guess.
I was taking lots of notes on what you're talking about. You have a really diverse background, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to bring you on the show. But more than that, in how you use your backgrounds, you mean going right into working for the State Department and having to work with executive leaders and ambassadors. That's high level stuff. And then how you can apply that to what we do now, or even at the smaller, even at the more local levels. You got to still learn how to work with those in leadership, those in government at different levels, especially if you're working at a city or county and you got to do with state and federal. Either way, you got to learn how to work with those individuals and give them the training, but also garner the respect that goes along with that, to actually have that authority that says, I know what I'm talking about. How is your, because you started in response, that's similar to me as well. I worked in educational law enforcement when I started, and I was trained. I was certified as an emergency medical technician, and then I had my fire one, and then I had law enforcement as well. So we did everything. We responded to everything. So my transition from emergency response to emergency management, a lot of my work in emergency response helped me greatly in how I've done what I do. So how is your background and the way you got started and how you've transitioned along the way shaped how you view and apply emergency management today?
I would say my background and experience, not only in a contextual textbook way, but also in the actual field experience way, has shaped the knowledge base and my confidence in what I've done in my career. So had I not had, obviously, the field experience, I wouldn't have made mistakes in my career, and I wouldn't have learned very hard lessons and successes and learned from mentors. There are a lot of people in my life, in my career, that have mentored me, whether they knew it or not. I watched a lot. I also am a voracious reader. And so my education was incredibly important to me, whether it was being an EMT and learning that, whether it was at the police academy or at the fire academy and learning those things. Even those simple types of educational background elements allowed me as an emergency manager when I was in the field to speak to the fire personnel on scene, the police personnel on scene, not to overstep, not to say, hey guys, I've done this, but to help ask the right questions or understand where I can best support them as the emergency management liaison on scene. And then as my career progressed, speaking to others who may have also had a progression through public safety, but are now in a leadership position, helping them understand that the career path that I've taken, maybe I'm younger than they would have expected, but I have a lot of field experience and I also have the educational background. And that in and of itself can create the confidence in others to understand, oh, okay, you've been a part of things. But make no mistake, there was never a time where I thought I knew everything. Perhaps maybe when I was a teenager. My parents may have thought I did. I'm certain I thought I knew everything at that point, but mostly in my career, I knew I was never the smartest person in the room, and I always wanted to learn more. And I knew things, and I knew how to apply my experience or education, but that was just one way. That was just my way. And maybe that worked for me. And if there was nobody else doing it a certain way, then great. I'm just going to continue with my way. But if I found other ways to do things and better processes and more efficiencies, I would incorporate that in and I would take that on and I would learn from that. So I would say those were the things, whether it was just having an pulling an all night shift. I was a dispatcher for about 3 months. Having that experience, oh my goodness, such a hard job. I respect our dispatchers so much, all in our field. But when you're on a phone line and you're sitting there talking to someone and all you can use is your voice to help calm them down, get information, help talk them through what they need to be doing to save a loved one. That is very different than when you're physically there in person, able to interact and stop something from happening or help someone physically with what you know. So that it's an incredibly hard job. So lots of little things here and there. But if I hadn't tried all those things, I wouldn't know where my capabilities are. I wouldn't know where I excelled. I wouldn't have learned where I sucked, frankly. This is not a strength of mine. I'm not going to do that anymore. Or, wow, this is a strength of mine and I would like to hone that. And how do I get better at that as I progress in my career and where I want to be? So I think those are the things that helped me do that. One of the greatest things when I was with the State Department is at that time, the State Department had just transitioned into plans that they had for the embassies to incorporate NIMS, the National Incident Management System, and ICS, our Incident Command System. And so I happened to be a pretty darn good expert in a sense. I have used it. I understood the protocols. I understood the doctrine. I incorporated it into plans. And so when I went to the State Department and looked at their plans and incorporated those things and had to train them and develop exercises on those things, I could help them understand how best to utilize NIMS and ICS principles for their use in an overseas environment for their embassy. And what I would love people to understand is that having textbook and classroom experience is valuable. Having field experience is valuable because then you have a toolbox with a lot of tools that you can empower yourself and empower others to use those tools at various times to be successful, be prepared, and to respond appropriately should something happen, which is what we want in our business.
I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you ended with that because that was going to be my next question on the education aspect of things. Because I personally, my education came second. I'm never really into school, never really growing up or whatever. And when I did read, it was far and few between in books. It was always normally the same type of book. I always studied. Well, I'd say I read. I didn't really study. I read leadership books, and then I got into emergency management and the education started to come and I started to go to EMI and then to CSTI and then I got my degree and then I got another degree and then I got another and now I study and research and I apply and it's different. So my
Mhm.
mindset and my application and the way I do things changed as I evolved. How does that change with you as it related to experience in the theory, then applying that theory into your experience?
Yeah, I found my trajectory was more of a leapfrog type of a career path where it mixed education, then field experience, then something interested me, then more education, and then I applied it. And so I found that I would have interests in something within our career field, and then I would find a way to learn more about it, whether it was a book, whether it was a certificate program. And there are so many things now that are available that weren't available when I started my career. I remember when I had my very first job, I worked for a Congress member. I was an intern first in DC, right after college, or right at my last year of college, my senior year, my undergrad. And then I came and worked for the Congress member out in California as a field rep in the district office. And emails, I don't think were even really a thing. The Congress members were given these new things called Blackberries to try. And I remember seeing the Congress member whenever we would drive around and scrolling on it, and I was just fascinated by it. And I look back and I think, what did I do during the day? I think I had a desktop computer, I think, but I would find that I had interests and then I'd explore the educational aspect. And then I would go get field experience. And then I would find something else that interested me, and I'd go find a book or another certificate program. And oftentimes I would try to get it done through the company I worked for, the agency I worked for, sell it as a point of here's how I can contribute better to the organization. And oftentimes it was covered, but sometimes it wasn't. So I had to make a choice. I will say that education comes in so many different forms, and I don't want anyone to ever think that a formal education is the only education to get. And I know we have a lot of job descriptions out there that talk about you have to have a degree or a preferred master's or things like that. And I understand that. I understand the value of a degree and what that does for people with recognizing skill sets or taking certain classes. But also, don't be scared to ask of those HR reps who might be there to help answer questions. Is there also an experience type of alternative if there's not a formal degree? Because education comes not only in the field, it comes from reading books. And if you can articulate that you're able to do a job or participate in a certain element, then that is the type of person we want. And education and experience have to go hand in hand. But there are so many things available. There was no virtual classes or programs really. Even my cohort was in person. And there are a lot of opportunities now that people shouldn't be scared to go try. There's a lot of free options out there, even if it's learning basics, economics. If you work for a government, a local agency, or even a state, go take some government classes or economics. That's what I did in my master's program, is we had some actual basic governance classes. And it was eye-opening. It helped me understand where the leadership was coming from, because emergency management and public safety even is a minuscule part of what they're looking at. There's so many other services and departments that they have to worry about. And so understanding, that's what education should be about, is learning and understanding and opening you up to other possibilities so that you can better frame what your character is and your thought process and how you want to engage in your own community at the local level, at the state level, at the federal level, at the international level. That's what education does for us, is it helps shape a broader perspective on all of these different issues that we may not have been exposed to before. And that's a good thing, right? Learning is a good thing.
Oh man, I'm falling in love with you a little bit. So
That's fine. I'll
yeah,
tell my
so
husband.
yeah, just to keep it between us. So the thing of, because that's why I call this theory into practice, because we have so much theory out there, but there's not so much application. And then there's a lot to change when you look at generational too. When I first started, we had a flip phone.
Yeah.
That was our watch commander phone, and we had a flip phone. But yeah, with a computer to do emails. That's what we didn't do anything on the phone. You had to go to an actual computer, sit down, hear it, dial up, and do its whole thing. But when
Yeah.
it comes to education, I feel like there's so much emphasis on in some of these areas, like you mentioned. It says you got to have a degree,
Mhm.
but I think, and I just watched it. It's funny, as I was watching a commercial just literally yesterday, and it's an Indeed commercial on. You said you left the. It said the guy interviewing says you left the education blank. You can't leave it blank. And she looked at him. She goes, "Having a 4-year degree is going to help me be a better host at the bar." And he
Right.
says, "Yeah, it is." And then he says, "What was yours?" And he said, "Oh, it's dance." That's going to
Yes.
help you do what you got to do. But one of the things too, I like what you said is, there's and I talk to people about this all the time, especially when it comes to those who want to get their advanced degrees in this. What'd you get your undergraduate in? I got it in emergency management. Well, then you shouldn't be getting a master's in emergency management. You should be getting a master's in something that will help you advance your skills in emergency management. So I got mine, and then I was like, what else can I get it in? And so you can expand your horizon a little bit and you can apply those things. But I think where a lot of our training goes wrong, or I can't really say it goes wrong, because any kind of training is good, but or if there's our lack of application or a lack of the
Mhm.
practical aspects of how we utilize it,
Yeah.
and going to classes and or taking a training or going to a course or getting a degree is amazing and definitely help you. And I feel like it's funny too, because when I talk to you at IAM and now I'm here listening to you talk now, you sound like you've had this long career and you're like close to retirement and you're so young that it's okay, what's next?
Yeah.
So you're, and because that's how fast technology has. It,
Yeah.
think about that. I'm to a point I can say I've done 20 years of as a career, and
Mhm.
technology has made it seem like we've done all this stuff, but we just kind of live through it. Yeah, yeah, as we
True.
go. But the gap in generations that's there now is that the new generation is all completely reliant on technology, and we learned it along the way, and we're trying to tell people, don't forget this, don't forget that, learn this. For me, it's the people skills. That was
Yeah.
always where I felt like I needed to do better. That's where I still feel like I need to do better. In
Mhm.
all of my degrees, I've taken advanced communications, psychology, human behavior, anything I could do to learn to be better, because I know my limitations and how
Mhm.
quick I go to frustration or how quick I get upset or my demeanor, how it is, like how I interact with people, how I write, do a video on the phone. It all matters.
Yeah.
And I think that really has helped me along the way. And I love how you implemented that, because you got to take, and I tell people like this too, and I hear this from people that I follow and stuff, but it really is applicable. You get that book and you read it and you study it, and then you can apply what's in that book in days versus decades, right? Because they took
Mhm.
decades to learn it. They wrote it
Right.
down, they gave it to you, and then you learned it in a few days of reading it. Now, what do you do with it, right?
Yeah.
So, how has that training in you got you to where you are now? Let's talk about where you are right now. You've gone through this great career, you've done these great things. Now it's okay, I've started a business. I've moved out, I've done all these things in with government and nonprofit, and now I'm moving in towards my thing as a business owner, doing what I love.
Yeah.
How has that contributed to where you are today?
Yeah, everything that I have learned throughout my career has been a tool in my toolbox. And what I focus on now is sharing that information with others, basically my experience, right? So it becomes advisory services mostly to other firms that I work with or the clients that we work with. And it's helping them understand, here's my experience. Here's how to take things that I understand as the regulations, as doctrine, as best practices. And here's how I have applied them. Here's how I can see you applying them or you have applied them. Here's how others have applied these things. And here's where I think it'll work best. Here's where I think adjustments can be made. And just providing that insight as a partner versus a professor in a sense, right? You're not just telling them what to do and then walking away. But I really look at it from the standpoint, I've found success throughout my career. I haven't always done it right by any means, but I have found success when you come at it from a collaborative standpoint. And we say a lot of female leaders tend to be more collaborative than dictatorship minded. There's a lot of also male, female leaders, whomever you want to say, whatever leader you have there. Oftentimes the most success comes from a servant mindset, a servant leader. And that's really where I try to come from. And as a partner, as an advisor, so that you're not reliant on me or my teams to continue on with what you want to do. But I'm there. I was a personal trainer in college, right? I'm there to help you reach your goals because I understand anatomy and muscle groups and exercises that will get you there. But the biggest blessing is when you learn it well enough that you start doing it on your own and growing and progressing, and you don't need me anymore. And that's how I really look at it. And so all of those experiences from being a personal trainer, from being a dispatcher, from being a lifeguard, an EMT, being a coordinator on site, being an actual consultant as a VP, all of these experiences are a part of who I am and a part of my toolbox so that I can take those little nuggets out when I feel the time is right and I'm talking to a client or working with a team and I'm advising them on how best to do something, or here's recommendations, or here's where I've found successes on doing it. And that's really the way forward, I think. We're in a very interesting time right now where we have multiple generations in the workforce. We have multiple styles and we have a lot of virtual abilities, which I don't think are bad. I think that we're able to have leaders who can manage virtual teams. I've done it. it's different. You have to be a different manager and different leader as you move forward to manage these teams. And so by having varied experiences, by having been with different cultures, by having worked with clients throughout the United States in different states. I'm from Southern California, very different. And us Californians have a very different way of being. I spent 10 years in Northern Virginia. Northern Virginians and DCers and Marylanders, right? The DMVers, very different than Southern Virginia or even the South. I now live in Wilmington, North Carolina, and I love it here. The South, very different. Wilmington, very different from Florida, Alabama, Arkansas, Texas. So having as much experience as possible and taking all those things, I know for me personally, helped me as I continue forward to talk to people, like you said, those people skills, help small talk in a sense, have that knowledge base about experiences or, oh, I've been there. I've always wanted to go there. What's it like to live there? What are the experiences you're having? Allow for that personal one-on-one type of interaction, because I think when it really comes down to it, we all have to learn how to interact together, not how we used to do it, not how the future expects it, but how it is right now. There are people who all they want to do is talk on the phone or talk in person. I'm going to admit, I'd rather text. I'm a Gen Xer, but I'd rather text. Much easier, I can get to it, or email. But I have learned that there are people who would prefer to talk, and especially as a consultant, I need to adjust to that. But then on the flip side, you have these younger generations who have learned how to communicate effectively, some not so effectively, but mostly effectively in the work environment through virtual means. And they're used to that and they're comfortable with that. And so you have to figure out a way to engage them and get to them through those means. And so having a wealth of experience and knowledge, being a Jack or Jill of all trades, allows you to do that. And so I would never fault someone for dedicating time to where they're at, whether it's a job, education, finishing it up, doing it appropriately, not leaving anyone hanging. But then if you find it's time for you to move on into something, a promotion, a different kind of job, a different set of experiences, to do that, because it makes you a better person and more well-rounded to be able to engage with your community, whomever that might be.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I think in it, but I think the change, the taking that application and putting it out there, and but learning to work with everybody and how they feel most comfortable, and having your own business and having becoming a business owner in general is there's a lot to it, right? But how does that affect how we do things, especially with the way the government is right now and the way the uncertainty is in the different there's different levels, not just government, nonprofit, not non-government, all these things that are taking place and the uncertainties that are out there as a business owner working inside the emergency management space. How do you see that what you're bringing to the table now a benefit to what's happening all over the place?
I think one of the things that we can help people understand, especially with my business, I focus a lot on our senior leaders, our elected officials, C-suite, and that bridge and that interface between their managers or that next line that they have to deal with. And I think with everything going on, understanding appropriate crisis communications, understanding prioritizing, much like we do in continuity of operations or business continuity planning, right? You have to take a look at, all right, I have risk of not receiving money, whether it's grant funds, whether it's reimbursable PA funds, things from disasters. Right now, we're in an environment and climate where we are uncertain about what the next 5 minutes might bring, let alone the 5 days, 5 months, 5 years. And that's incredibly difficult, not only for corporate partners. And you see these corporate conglomerates who say they can't think about bringing their businesses, if that's the goal, to bring business into the US, manufacturing or other types of things, if they can't understand what the horizon looks like in 5 years. So how is we as emergency managers, when we cannot predict any disaster that's going to head our way, however, we can't understand what our vulnerabilities are, so we have a good understanding about we're probably going to have a hurricane on the East Coast or in the Gulf. We're probably going to have wildfires out on the West Coast. We're probably going to have these types of things, utility outages, power outages, whatever it might be. We can prepare for those things, but when we have a fear of funding, now we're in a pickle. And how do we, as leadership, emergency managers, people who are aspiring to be leaders in that field, or even in their governments or agencies or nonprofits or anywhere, how do we find ways to achieve what we know we need to achieve, whether it's certain preparedness goals, whether it's certain response elements, whether it's certain capital purchases? How do we find either unique ways to do it, whether it's incorporating it into our operating budget, or recognizing we have a finite amount of funds, let's see how we can pull those things together, perhaps. Or there may be some hard conversations that our jurisdictions are not going to be able to be as prepared as we hope they could be. And that's where, as organizations, we can look to our volunteer partners. It's hard to say, if we don't get the money, we still have to do it. Some things, yes, other things will go away, but this is where we can look at our volunteering partners. And so for me, and what I do with my company, is I help my clients see those various options, right? What is available to them or could be available to them, and thinking outside of a box that perhaps they have been in for a pretty long time. It's not that I'm any smarter. It's not that I have all these magic ideas. It's because I'm an outsider, right? And I'm not in the box with them. I know when I was in my own agencies, sometimes it's hard to think of alternate solutions to problems that are right in front of you, right? And so having someone with a different perspective come in, a diverse perspective, allows you to see other types of solutions. And we utilize this in our basic training for incident command. I talk to, whenever I train, I've been training ICS 3 and 400 for years. And I would always get to the one area within planning that talked about our goals, our strategies, our objectives, our tactics, all of those things in there. And how do we look at those things from our broad goals to what are the objectives we want to achieve, to then what are those strategies? We could have multiple strategies to achieve the objective, but there might only be one reasonable tactic as we get further down to achieve that strategy, to achieve that objective that leads to that goal, right? And so it's helping our organizations, and especially senior leaders, understand what that looks like in the face of an uncertain environment and an uncertain future. And I think for a lot of emergency managers, there's a lot of fear that their jobs won't be there anymore. And I can understand how when you feel that way, you really don't want to do anything. And so now you have a workforce who's incredibly scared, knows they have a job to do, because most emergency managers are very passionate about what we do. That is the one thing all of us have in common, is we are passionate about it. And so how do you now engage with those folks to make sure that they can still accomplish what they need to be accomplishing? And so that's a lot of what my company does. We also do our normal preparedness types of activities and planning and training exercises, after actions and response and all of that, which I love and my team members love. But I personally focus on that executive level, trying to help advise them on those types of issues.
Yeah, that's amazing. One of the things that I'm trying to do right now is bring together, I'm finding it more and more, it's happening a lot more, is there are a lot more entrepreneurs or startups or nonprofits. So that they're not really sure if they want to be a for-profit business or a nonprofit business or how they want to do it, but they have a want entrepreneurial is what we're calling it right now. They don't still know exactly how they want to accommodate it. But I'm trying to bring together like-minded individuals in the business space, because you're an entrepreneur or a business owner, and how we can help each other, because how we bring our resources and the abilities of all these different people that are doing, they may not be doing the same thing, but they're in a like-minded, they're working in the emergency management space, whether it's nonprofit or not, or for profit, together to really get the word out on, look, you have options, you have resources available to you. You just might have to think outside the box a little bit. So as we continue to grow in the space, because I'm seeing, I'm talking to people left and right on either they've already started or they've been doing it for a while or they're getting ready to. go out and they have their own business or consult or whatever it may be. Some people think that I'm a consultant, so I have my own business. It's different than running a business, having to be have responsibility over another employee that you have to make
Mhm.
sure you pay them. There's difference, and but there's so many options out there, so many different people doing it. But some take away the competitiveness and go to the collaborative approach, right? Because emergency management, as you said, is one thing we all have in common is that we're passionate. We're all, yeah, I 100%. But I think another thing we have in common, I'd say 99.9% of emergency managers very want to collaborate. They want
Mhm.
to coordinate support. They want to help other people. There's no, this is mine, that's yours. The reason why when I did my kind of switch over to emergency management from first response, you have those interplay that don't like each other in certain things or certain stepping on toes, jurisdictional stuff. As emergency manager, I got to work with everybody and get that coordination, and I knew how to speak the language of law enforcement, of fire, of EMS. So it flowed easier. Being able to work with everybody. I feel like we need to be doing that more in the business realm now because that's growing. And as we have so much uncertainty in reliance on government, right? How the government's going to do things, how we can bring our services and business operation into helping bridge the gap or fills the need that may be out there. How do you feel like we could do that at a level that brings it because go back to that competition thing, right? They're a business and they're competing against me. How do we build that gap to say that we can collaborate as business owners or as entrepreneurs or as consultants that still feel the need that we know is there without the any kind of animosity or negativity that is breeded from competition.
I think we need to utilize existing resources. And so we have several associations, right? You talked about, you and I chatted at IAEM. I think that's an incredible agency and organization led by a great group of people, not only at the national level, but within each region, at the states as well. And even at the state emergency management agency or association types of levels. NEMA obviously is another good one. The National Association of Counties is a good one, so NACO. And I think what we can do as entrepreneurs, as consultants, is infuse ourselves and make sure we're actively participating in those associations, not only so that we're continuing to learn what the issues are that our emergency management friends are dealing with, but that we have the ability to provide subject matter expertise through thought leadership, right? Speaking engagements or contributing to topics. If you see a problem, say that's something that I can help with. Is there a way that I can lend my services or support to those things? And you broaden it out to associations that already exist. I don't think we need to reinvent the wheel. I think we need to shore up those organizations that already exist that have those avenues to allow us to be collaborative in a safe environment, especially when it comes to business, right? There is something so much more. If you're looking to start a business and not just be a sole proprietor, there's so much more to business than just being the consultant and trying to get some money and contracts and doing the work. There are other aspects, and I talk to people all the time. I get messages about, I want to start my own company, or I've started my own company. What should I be looking at? So I help advise people on the route to go or different elements that they need to be thinking about early on. Something as simple as, what type of webinar or virtual meeting space do you like? Do you like Zoom? Do you like Teams? Do you like, I don't know what else is out there, all these other things. And so, depending on what you prefer to use, you actually want to start your integration of your company website, domain, your emails, things like that. You actually want to start them a very specific way. I've learned that through experience. And when we come to what we're actually consulting on as emergency managers, I think we can be collaborative with associations that already work because that's where we're going to have our emergency management colleagues bringing up the issues that are important to them. That's where we're going to hear it, and that's where we're going to be able to find out where can we lend support, even if it's, oh, you guys, if you have the money, go ahead and put it out an RFP. Or if that's not something that's able, can the association help and support with almost like a tech assistance? FEMA does this or has done this in the past. The federal government actually across many agencies does this, where they hire technical support and it goes to an RFP and of a large company typically, but a company will become that technical support that then locals and states can ask for help to do lots of different things. And so that consultant can help do that. And so I think just reframing and looking at how we best can support each other achieve our preparedness goals in this new environment, or in an environment that is very unstable, that we don't know what it looks like, is going to have to be a new way forward for us. So some of that is good. Some of that is out of necessity. Some of it, many people may go kicking and screaming, which is understandable. It's not fair. A lot of what's going on is not fair, but when it comes to us as business owners or us as consultants, that's one way I think we can help support with our knowledge and our services and our experience, is to go to those organizations that already bring those colleagues together who need our help.
That's awesome. And there are some great associations out there, some not so great, but some great ones out there. And we met at IEM. I'm a big proponent of IEM, but there are those NEMA, National Emergency Management Association or agency, and there's a lot of different ones. A lot of good state ones as well, but there are some other ones too that are growing. They're not, or I wouldn't say they're growing. They're just having more. They're doing more at other places. Whether or not they're good or not, I couldn't speak of any real good experience there because I've gone. But I've heard a lot of good things, and there's recently I've been hearing a lot more stuff internationally, being able to hear the international associations that are happening, or conferences or expos or whatever, or symposiums that are going on that are happening at different places around the world that we should be taking advantage of too. We need to be learning, but also building those networks and those collaborative efforts worldwide could definitely help us here. And yeah, with everything happening, there's going to be there's a lot more. There's already been a growing need for people to come in and consult, or to teach, or to train, or fill gaps in on the private sector. And then there are those that are looking more on the private or the nonprofit side on how they can create systems or procedures or just a platform to be more of an advocate for the emergency manager or their profession, or be able to bring in funding for research and stuff like that. So a lot of stuff's happening out there. We just need to be able to. A lot of things that happen, they happen in silos, and if they happen in silos, and they definitely can't grow, and a lot of people don't know about them as well. So if we could expand the amount of people that know about these things, and amount of operations that are not happening in silos, and they could happen more at a collaborative pace, and with the understanding too that you're in it to make money. You got to make a living, right? It's a business. You got to
Yeah,
make a living to be able
sure.
to. And I sometimes I find you got, when you're like myself, my experience, I can't speak for anybody else, but I've heard people say this to me in agreement, is that when you have a business and you're trying to make a living doing what you do, doing what you love, like doing this and doing summits and doing stuff like that, and they're like, you're just in it to make money. Yeah, I have to make a living to continue to do what I do. I have to
Right.
charge a fee, and that fee is this. And
Mhm.
so anyway, getting over that mindset that if it's not free, then it's not for me. If the government doesn't pay for it, I don't do it. That mentality is really hurting the emergency management industry. And we see that right now big time, as we talked about a little bit. Do you see that changing at all in the near future, or do you see that as a continued uphill battle?
I think it's going to ebb and flow because you have people in leadership positions or in our agencies right now who have experienced this for many years. They have seen their emergency management programs be funded through grants. They have seen their emergency management programs get cut. They've seen them integrate with a fire department, a police department, or engineering departments. There have been all crazy types of things. Then we have the newcomers, the new to career. And that's not necessarily people who are just only young, right? We have a lot of people who transition, but they're new to this career. And this will be the first time they're experiencing something like this. Will this last forever? No, nothing does, especially in our country. This will ebb and flow. It's just a matter of how long it can last and how things that are being put into place or being impacted right now, how long those cascading effects will last. And I think that's where we want to try to insulate as best as possible the core functions of what emergency management is, and understand and really talk through what are the important elements of emergency management and why is it important to prepare the community, prepare our agencies, have continuity plans, right? Making sure that we understand and train together and exercise, because the biggest fear that I have that I think people may not be looking at because it's hard to look long term when all you're dealing with is a lot of short term disasters and fires. And I'm not saying the actual disasters and fires we deal with, but the national political arena that's going on right now and the threat to all of the things that are going on. What I don't want to happen is that we become complacent because of funding. And we simply say we can't do those things, which we may not be able to. But then we become less prepared and more vulnerable, and things start to happen again and impact us in such a way that it bankrupts localities, it bankrupts states. We're seeing that with Arkansas right now. The governor had asked for a declaration, it was denied, appealed, right? And so now we're seeing issues with that. And these are communities that cannot afford to pay for these things themselves. They never could, they never will be able to. There's no tax base. There's no money that comes from these things. And so I think as we're looking at how to fund emergency management programs or the services, the types of services that an emergency management program would provide, we may have to come to terms with, we don't have the ability to put it into an operating budget because there are other necessary things by law that a locality has to provide or a state has to provide that takes priority, or there's just not the senior leadership buy-in for it. And so we're going to see a lot of programs go away. We're going to see a lot of vulnerabilities be exposed again. And we're going to see a lot of communities that aren't necessarily prepared and hit a lot harder and financially hit a lot harder because they don't have the support necessary for those things. That is a direct result of what turmoil is going on right now. I don't think that's necessarily a direct result of having built our programs on grants only and not having the right people. There's a reality of once a disaster hits, it doesn't matter how your people are paid. You're either going to recover from that financially or you're not. You're going to recover from it as a community or not. And oftentimes that is where FEMA has grown to versus when it first started, it was just the checkbook, right? Back in the 70s. And then it became a little bit different. Then it became a partner in a lot of things. And now it's a strong pocketbook as well as partner to help the states and locals do a recovery that is not as protracted as it would be, or maybe non-existent. If FEMA or the federal government wasn't involved in certain things with the ability to provide funding, a lot of these communities would not be able to rebuild following a disaster. And that is the stark reality of it. And so these are some challenges that we're going to be dealing with, some harsh realities coming into hurricane season. I pray that there aren't any big ones this year. Give us a little break. That doesn't quite happen that way.
Yeah, it's a story of an EM life, especially in the specific area. But then you got Midwest storms, and then you got fires, and it's almost unseasonal now. It's just happen. It is what it is. It's not even. You had a fire season, you had a hurricane season. It just they happen now. So it's just what it is, and they're getting stronger and more frequent, and the damage that they're doing is just because of failing infrastructure, changing infrastructure. It's all. But yeah, very well said. I appreciate you saying that. I appreciate you and you taking the time. I appreciate what you're doing with your business. And overall, just appreciate this last 45, 50 minutes that you've given me. It's been a great conversation. I could talk to you all day on this stuff. I'm sure that
Absolutely.
we'll have another conversation about it at some point. I look forward to getting to talk with you more, get to see you more at some of the conferences and stuff like that, and see how we can help each other. But more than that, so those who are watching and listening right now, how can they get a hold of you if they want to connect?
Yeah, they can absolutely get a hold of me. They can go to my website, huntstrategicsolutions.com. You can also email me without issue. It's my first name, Stephanie, spelled the normal way, STEPHANIE .hunt, HUNT, at huntstrategicsolutions.com. And there was a very specific reason why I named my company the way I did and not something specific to emergency management. But I really believe that we can find solutions strategically to problems that help us solve these issues together in a way that maximizes our efficiency and our effectiveness for everyone involved. And so that's really why Hunt Strategic Solutions exists, so that I can try to help people do that if they need it, if they want me. But I'm happy to talk about all sorts of things, from how do we adjust and engage our HR hiring processes to get better emergency managers or help find new to career folks? How do we, as leaders, train a new workforce in a virtual environment? One of the things I'm passionate about. And how do we empower leaders at every step in their career to be ethical, to have a quality of character that we can be proud of, and that we look at them and we can say, you know what, that's someone I'm proud to know.
I love the name. I'm big on strategy. Hunt is deliberate. If you think about it
Mhm.
like that, to hunt is deliberate. So hunting deliberately strategic. I love it. I think it's a great name. Hunt strategy. I'll put all those links and stuff like that in the show notes
Awesome.
as well. So if you're driving down the road and while you're listening to this, please, I'll have it in the show notes. You can always check it out later, and I'll put those contacts in there, the email and the website, and even your LinkedIn if you want people to connect with you on
Please.
LinkedIn. I'll put your LinkedIn in there as well. Thank you so
Absolutely.
much for your time. It's been amazing
It's
talking
my
to you.
pleasure.
I was looking forward to it for a long time now, so I'm glad we got to connect.
Too.
And I tell everybody, your time is your most valuable resource, and I appreciate you giving me some of that today.
It is my pleasure. Thank you. And thank you for asking the wonderful questions.
For all those who are out there listening, thank you so much. Please subscribe. Please share it. If you know somebody who could benefit from this conversation, please share it with them. Also, if you could like it, even give us a comment. I take feedback. So if you want to email me or put it into give me a DM on LinkedIn, I look at all that stuff. My name is Dan Scott, and our goal here is to get better, and let's do it together. I will talk to you next time.